Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the College Football Coast to Coast show. I'm your host, Jacob. I'm here along with my co host, Tyler. We're coming to you guys. It is currently Tuesday. I know we're a day late. I had some stuff come up yesterday and I had a big college exam I had to take care of. Um, but everything's gone well so far. And we're here to talk some college football, Tyler. So
Yeah,
we'll jump right into our recap for last week here for week 6. Some big games. I know I attended the LSU and Tennessee game, and it was a good time. A lot of people there, and not the outcome for the LSU fans and faithful. Uh, but moving on from that week, things might look up in the future as they go into next week. And for Tennessee, they've got a tough game coming up that we'll talk about later on in the show. But getting started here, we'll go right into our Week 6 recap, and we'll open up with our ACC. In our first game, Florida State went on the road to face off against the number 14 ranked NC State Wolfpack. I almost said UNC, but the Wolfpack end up holding on by two. Wacky score here, a little bit 19-17, kind of a weird score. Uh, Low scoring between these two teams. I wasn't expecting it to be this low with the offenses that both of these teams have. Just defense came up big, I think, really in key moments.
yeah, the defense definitely was a big shocker in this one. Two quarterbacks we talked about last week. Really in this matchup between these two teams with Jordan Travis on Florida State side and then Devin Leary on NC State side. But yeah, score is really says it all here. I mean, Florida State had an opportunity. They were driving down the field, 18-17, literally, and they decided, to go for a touchdown rather than, to just kick the field goal and try to win it there, which was just really just a stupid mistake. If you're Mike Norvell, I mean, I don't care. Like if it's like a 1 point win, I'd rather get a win than lose by that 2 points. But Jordan Travis did not play well in this one. He had two interceptions in this one. So this was, a really big win for whoever was going to win this one. It was going to at least stay in the ACC race for at least another week. Florida State, now looking at them, they're 4-2, and two of their losses have come inside the conference. So with chasing down Clemson, who's probably not even going to lose a game in the ACC, either that's going to be 0 losses or 1 loss, you would have to say already that Florida State's eliminated from the ACC title contention. But if you're NC State, this was definitely a big win. Coming off the loss to Clemson, this was definitely big getting a win at home.
Yeah, I think the one thing to note for Florida State, what you got coming up next week, you've got a date
No.
with Clemson and you're playing at home. So it's going to be a big game. They could ultimately get themselves back into the ACC race with a win there. And a lot of people thinking that, they have no shot in order to win a game like that. But we'll get into that as well. And for NC State, moving on this upcoming week, they got Syracuse on the road. So it's going to be another big game for them, too. Two ranked opponents for both of these squads after this past week. But moving on from the ACC, we'll get into the Big 12. And our Big 12 recap was number 17 TCU, the Horned Frogs, pulling one out close against the undefeated, where it was undefeated, number 19 Kansas Jayhawks. Close game. It was all about who got the ball last, I think, in this game. And it set up to be a fantastic game. And I knew there were going to be a lot of points scored here, but I was pleasantly surprised by the battle that Kansas gave to TCU in this one because by the numbers, Kansas was definitely the inferior team. Going in, and for them to hold their own there and only lose by a touchdown against a quarterback at Duggins that just doesn't seem like he's going to miss all season, it was a good win for TCU though.
Yeah, Kansas definitely showed a lot of fight. Jalen Daniels goes with an injury, which we'll get in our news segment. But Mr. Bean comes back in to start. He was a starting quarterback for the Jayhawks last year, and he has a cannon of arm. He had that one touchdown in the second half. It was like a 40-yard bomb to tie up the game. But yeah, this was just a back and forth shootout. This is a prototypical Big 12 matchup, and we got it on Saturday morning. College game day. That scene was insane in Lawrence, Kansas. They definitely deserved it. But on the field, like you mentioned, Max Duggan was just the better quarterback of the two. I mean, this TCU team, I mean, a lot of people slept on them. I think a lot of hype was around Baylor and Oklahoma State, but I think that TCU right in front of them, they're undefeated. They're the number 12 team in the country right now, and they have Oklahoma State coming to town. So honestly, if they win that, I wouldn't be shocked if I see this TCU team undefeated and in the playoff mix, which I'm sure no one had this TCU team in the playoff. But this was definitely a huge road win. Kansas is no slouch. They definitely have a lot of talent to pile up probably 9 wins. They'll probably lose one or two more. They have Oklahoma on the road, and then they have still to play Texas as well. But for TCU, I think that their offense is legit. I think that their defense is good enough to get them the win. Their defense isn't great, but it got the job done against a Kansas team that was really fighting back and forth. So got to give credit to TCU once again.
Yeah, I think it ultimately goes into the self belief in both of these squads. I don't think a lot of people counted them in, to be both undefeated, going into this week. I mean, at the halfway point, and both of these teams are undefeated in the Big 12. I think a lot of people thought that these two teams were going to bring up the rear in the Big 12. Uh, and I ultimately thought they would too. I had no anticipation on either of these two teams making it this far. We had the conversation earlier today. TCU. I picked Colorado to beat TCU in the opener of the year, and you saw how that turned out. So I mean, you really just don't know until you get into the meat of the schedule. And these two teams, a lot of self belief, and they should really be proud of their efforts up into the halfway point, and hopefully continue on. But for these teams, some big games still coming up on their schedule, and moving on to a not so big game. We're going to drop down to the worst game of the week, the
Jeez.
worst game on the recap, folks. No, this is not hockey. This is not soccer. It is a
This is
football
not
sport.
baseball.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
football.
yeah. Iowa, the Hawkeyes went to face off against the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Illinois holds on at home by a field goal, 9-6. This is prototypical Iowa not being able to score and their defense doing it all. I don't think they even got a touchdown in this game. This is a field goal game, really back and forth, and it's pretty sad. I think for Iowa that you can't win a game against an Illinois team that has struggled to stay above 500 in the last few years. But I had the conversation with you. I mean, we talked about it on the Sports Scramble show. We've talked about it on here. I said Illinois is for real. I think, and it goes to show. I mean, it was a close game, because of Iowa's defense. But Illinois is for real. I mean, they're currently, I don't know if they're in the lead in the East, or in the West. I'm sorry, in the Big
They
Ten
are.
West. Yeah. So I mean, that says a lot about their squad and what Brett Bielema has done for that team, and it's pretty incredible to this point to see Illinois up there and Iowa slowly fading off into the rearview mirror, and could be for a long time.
Yeah, Illinois' offense is going to ride the coattails of their running back, Chase Brown. I mean, he had 146 yards. I'm sure that you know him of a Penn State fan from last year's game, what he did to your team. But yeah, Iowa is just a bad football team this year. You can have all the best defense in the Big Ten, but Spencer Petras is not going to do it. The same thing with Wisconsin and Graham Mertz. I'm not saying like to make the change. I just think that this Iowa offense is just plain vanilla. Like Kirk Ferentz is running offense that worked back in the 1970s. It doesn't work anymore in 2022 in the modern day offense. But yeah, all field goals. I'll go ahead and say this. They had a 27-yard field goal, 2-yard field goal, 37-yard field goal, a 27-yard field goal, and a 36-yard field goal. So like they were chip shot field goals. So the offense has got into the red zone. They just couldn't even convert. So yeah, this was definitely a sleepy game. I watched like the second half in this one. My gosh, this must have been like the most boring game ever. So yeah, like you mentioned, this is prototypical Big Ten football. Not a lot of scoring and a whole lot of defense. So definitely a huge win for Illinois. I think that they're flying under the radar. Everyone's talking about all the Big Ten East, the top three, but Illinois is sitting at the top, undefeated in the Big Ten West, and they got a big date with Minnesota at home this weekend.
Yeah, I think the one thing to realize, with the Big Ten West, it's so weak, and you just never know who's going to do it. Minnesota, we talked about a couple weeks ago, was that team, and they get beat
Yeah.
by Purdue at home in a 20-10 game. And then, Illinois kind of makes a surge here under the radar. And I said, let's keep an eye on them. And, I think it was just about getting out of this game alive. I think that was the biggest thing for Illinois, and all credit to them. And I hope they do win the Big Ten East, because I feel like they would put up a fight with somebody in the West, whoever that may be, and just give them headaches, just because you just don't know what they're going to throw at you, because Illinois just isn't that prototypical team that you see around the country. But moving on from the Big Ten and that sleeper game out west to the Pac-12, we had a good game here, and number 11 Utah, 32, went on the road to face number 18 UCLA, who scored 42 points in this game. Unbelievable scoring affair in this one. UCLA is for real on offense, and it's undeniably one of the best offenses in the country right now. And I don't see any stopping them right now. So it seems like they have taken sole possession of either first or second place, in the Pac 12, however you view where USC is. They're with them, but UCLA is creeping up there, and of course their ranking is a little better than where they are right now, and of course Utah's ranking on here is a little worse than it is right now.
Yeah.
But both teams did stay inside the top 25, which I'm surprised that Utah stayed in, and we'll get to that. But for DTR in that Bruins offense, I mean, it seems like they've got something that's clicked with Chip Kelly out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's about time that DTR gets some Heisman love. I know that CJ Stroud is pretty much the front runner right now, but I think that DTR of UCLA, he had 4 touchdowns against this Utah defense. I know that you and I had Utah. We were very big Utah believers this season. We both had them in the playoff. I think we've jumped off that bandwagon ever since.
Yeah.
But I'm just very impressed with this UCLA team. I mean, they showed it in the first half of last year, and then if you remember, in the second half, they just completely fall apart. So I think this might be UCLA's best chance to actually make it to the Pac-12, and if they keep winning, they can make it to the playoff. I mean, they still have USC. That's pretty much their thing that they have left. So I think that USC has shown that they're vulnerable. I mean, Washington State played them close before USC, went away with it. Oregon State has played USC close, so I really wouldn't count out, UCLA's, defense is a bit of a problem, giving up, 30 points to a Utah team that has a really good quarterback in Cam Rising. So, at the end of the season, when these two teams have to play, this is going to be a really good quarterback matchup between DTR and Caleb Williams. But very impressive UCLA. I mean, they just have it all. They can throw it with DTR, and then you have Charbonnet on the ground. I know that was a big key for you in this game, and he went off. I mean, he's just a stud. I think he's going to be the next great, NFL that we're seeing. For Kenneth Walker, we saw him this weekend take over, and then we're seeing so many great rookie running backs in the NFL. So I think that Charbonnet is going to be the next one.
Yeah, I think Zach Charbonnet was, like you said, he's ultimately the key for me in this game. And yeah, it shows. I mean, 22 carries for 198 yards and a touchdown, almost 200 yards on the ground, basically, against a Utah defense that was supposed to be superior in college football this season.
502 total yards of offense. That is just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I mean, you got 300 yards almost even for DTR in this game, and great throwing percentage. For Cam Rising, I mean, he didn't do too bad. It was the running game for Utah that was just stagnant. 18 carries for 91 yards for their top back. And I think, what's under the radar for UCLA is their receiving core. They have a fantastic receiving core, and from what I've seen, big physical receivers that'll match up well against USC, and I think it'll be a great, fantastic game. But I think if UCLA can keep the running game going and Zach Charbonnet can keep running the ball, DTR gets out there and runs sometimes if the pocket collapses, they can take advantage of that USC secondary. But of course, our picks and predictions for that will be later. But that's all for the Pac-12. Moving to the SEC, we're recapping probably the wildest game of the weekend and the stupidest finish I've ever seen. Well, the stupidest finish I've seen all
The
year.
stupidest play call.
Yeah, and the dumbest play call I've seen out of a offensive coordinator, if that was the one who did make that call. Uh, Texas A&M goes to Tuscaloosa. They put up 20 on Alabama, but Alabama holds on with 24 points, riding their backup quarterback in Milrow. So I think what the takeaway is from this game is, you get down there and A&M forces a 3-and-out on Alabama for all intents and purposes, 3-and-out. And you get the ball back with a little over, well, right about the 2-minute mark. And all of a sudden, you're pushing the ball down the field. You get all the way down, and there's a pass interference call, and you get it at the 2-yard line. And you basically have one play to run it because I believe there were like 4 seconds or on the clock or whatever. And nobody ran up. You stacked the box and you had a one-on-one on the outside and did a little out route. But the quarterback didn't even throw it to the end zone. He threw it to about the 1-yard line in the corner and gave his receiver no chance. I thought it was the dumbest play call. And A&M, with A-Chain in the backfield, we've talked about him all season so far and about he is the key piece for A&M. And he ran the ball decent against Alabama. I mean, he was no breakout runs, but it was solid, 5-6 yard runs. And you don't give him the ball on the 2-yard line. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Or even putting a couple of guys in the backfield and just pushing Haynes King into the end zone. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give your playmaker the ball there. You either run it with him up the gut and, try and force it up the middle against an Alabama defensive front. Because if I'm going to lose a game like that, I'd rather lose, giving it to if he doesn't get it, then okay, then he's our best playmaker. And they just made a good play. It's just a boneheaded play call. I mean, even if the wide receiver would have made the catch, he wouldn't have made it into the end zone anyways. It would have been at the 1-yard line stop. So just to the game itself, I mean, the main storyline was Bryce Young not playing in this game. Milrow, the Derrick Henry spawn of himself, played quarterback. He didn't really have a good game. He had 4 turnovers, 2 picks, and 2 fumbles. Alabama just tried to give Texas A&M the game, and A&M wasn't able to really do it. But Haynes King, I think the play of him was really good. That was definitely his best game yet here in an Aggie uniform. But it's just something about A&M and Bama playing. I mean, we saw it last year at Texas A&M. It was like a 38-35 game, and they kicked a game-winning field goal. And then this year it's close. So it's like I feel like every year this game is awesome. And then we had the offseason headlines of Jimbo and Nick Saban going at each other. And then on the field, even before, we were saying, oh, this is going to be a blowout, right? Alabama's going to cruise. And then, Texas A&M is going to be like, okay, we're 3-3. There goes, season high. Well, you're still 3-3, but you did lose only by 4. A lot of people had this. Even the line was like 24 and a half.
24 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, it was an insane line. Like I said on the Sports Scramble show, Alabama already, in week 2 lost to 1 point, not won by 1 point, excuse me. That was their 1 life. Now this is their 2nd life. How many lives is this Alabama team is going to have? Are they going to lose this weekend against Knoxville? But yeah, this was just an insane game. And honestly, CBS, way you look back at it, they made the right choice of putting it at prime time.
Yeah, I mean, it was the right choice. And, I think Alabama is, 3 strikes and you're out, I think. And I think it's coming. So, it's just a matter of what week it's going to be because you still got Ole Miss. You still got, Tennessee this weekend. So, I mean, you're testing the waters here and you're on thin ice. So, I mean, it's very close. I mean, even if they do get Bryce Young back, I don't think it's that much of a change. I still think that somebody can beat them this year. And I know that you have belief in that. And it's just it's an issue of I just don't think Alabama is the Alabama of old anymore. And I said that to start the season. And
yeah.
I just think it's a different year and it's a different time. We're talking about teams like TCU and UCLA, and it's a different time. So I think the time has come where it's going to be a bit of a change for Alabama, and they're going to have to compete now to win an SEC championship or even get to the SEC championship now.
All right.
But moving on from the SEC, we're going to the Group of Five, and our one Group of Five game we're recapping was played in Las Vegas as number 16 BYU is still there in the top 25, 20, and they went. Of course, they faced Notre Dame in the Shamrock Classic, and for Notre Dame, I mean, it's two sides of the story. You know, of course, they hold on 28-20 in this one. It's two completely opposite spectrums where we didn't even know if they were on the field to start the season. They were so bad to now that they're seem like they're a little more efficient, and it was like trying to pull a dog into the water that just hates the water. And it finally got in and said, "Oh, this ain't too bad." It was really that bad, and it. I thought, I said, I don't think Notre Dame's going to win, but more than 5 games this year. And of course, there's a long ways to go still, and very well could be short 5 games. But I mean, it it just doesn't seem like the right fit. I just feel like BYU had an off week, and it just didn't seem right. I mean, they ran the ball okay. Passing wise, they need to go back to the drawing board for BYU. Uh, and a lot of hype around this game for Notre Dame. They're 10-0 in Shamrock games, so they have not lost one every time they've played one. So I mean, that kind of tells you the story right there. Of course, they wanted to win on a big road trip out to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think the main key for Notre Dame's really turnaround after starting 0-2, now sitting at 3-2, is Drew Pine, the quarterback change. So I think that Drew Pine had 3 touchdowns in this game against a really solid BYU team. I mean, last time that really, faced a formidable offense, they gave up like close to 40 points to Oregon in offense, but a Baylor offense, they like 24 points. But yeah, this BYU offense is really non-existent. The quarterback play really struggled. He only had 2 touchdowns and an interception. That's just not going to be good enough against the Notre Dame defensive front. So, like we mentioned weeks ago, after they started 0-2, we kind of looked at their schedule and we said, okay, Notre Dame is probably going to be like a 6-6 team. Maybe that still happens, but I definitely feel more confident about this Notre Dame team going forward. I know that they play Clemson in a couple of weeks, and it's at home, so maybe that they can shock Clemson's schedule, ruin their season as well. They still have USC, they have Stanford this weekend, who isn't very good, 1-4. So I think that this will be a team that will pick up a couple of wins and get to a bowl eligibility. I think that Marcus Freeman is going to have it's not going to be like a 10-2 type of year like Notre Dame fans are really used to, but it's going to be a really good year to build towards the future. And if you're BYU, on the other hand, you start off the season really good, and now you've lost, to Oregon, and now you lost to Notre Dame. You have Arkansas at home. So if you don't really win that one, then your season pretty much just went from being really good to being, well, what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman really wanted to give his team a test, new head coach and everything, and wanted to show, hey, this is Notre Dame football. And man, Notre Dame football looks a little up and down right now, and they're just riding the wave right now. So I think we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Of course, that'll tell the story of the long-term effects of what this change for Marcus Freeman has meant for Notre Dame, and whether it's been positive or negative for this program. But of course, moving on from our Week 6 recap, and we're going to get into our risers and fallers. But first, our first sponsor of the show, Tyler, is our Fanatic sponsorship. So we have a partnership with Fanatic. So if you guys want to hook up yourselves with some college football gear this season, and of course get out to a game, I know I sported my LSU gear from Fanatics here at the game the last weekend. So I know I'll be supporting it this weekend as I'm wearing my Penn State gear and watching the Penn State versus Michigan game. Of course, we'll get to. So I'll be wearing my gear. I know, Tyler, you'll probably be I don't know what LSU's got who this week.
We got Florida this week.
So I know you'll be wearing your LSU gear watching that game. So if you guys want to head over there and use our link for our show right there, and of course that helps us out a little bit with the production of our show and growing our show. And I'm not sure what the code is today, Tyler, but what is the code for us today?
Yep, looked it up. I knew that was coming. But you code camp. It's all uppercase. Excuse me. CAMP camp. So you can get 65% off side wide. So definitely take advantage of that deal and use our affiliate link down below.
Absolutely. And getting into our risers and fallers of the top 25 after week 6, our top 4 has changed a little bit. So it's
Yes.
kind of moved around a little bit. So Georgia has claimed possession of number 1 all over again. And it seems like they'll be there for a little while, maybe, unless somebody decides to knock them off. Ohio State comes in at 2, with Alabama falling to number 3 after that close win against A&M at home. And Clemson holds on to the number 4 spot with a hold-on win on the road at Boston College this past week. So, who are your uh, risers and your fallers? We'll go with the risers first. Who is your riser of week 6?
I'm going to go to the SEC, go with Mississippi State, a team that we're very familiar with. I mean, ever since the LSU loss, I think that was their wake up call. I think after that they've just been blowing the doors off of people. The past 2 games have been Texas A&M. They put up 40 points, and then Arkansas they put up 40 points, and it was not even close. 41-17, and then 40-14. So I think that this Mississippi State team on both sides is very legit. They have a Heisman candidate in Will Rogers. So I think that he should be the front runner and not CJ Stroud. I think that Will Rogers itself is having, a bigger, statistical wise, he's having a better season than Stroud. But I think that Stroud is the front runner just because Ohio State's number 2 in the country. And that they're their national brand, while Mississippi State didn't really look like a national brand. But I think that this Mississippi State team has really, shown that they could be legit and can really compete in the SEC West. Like you mentioned, the struggles of Alabama, I think, is going to up the conversation of an Ole Miss or Mississippi State competing for a spot in Atlanta. So Mississippi State does still have, a really tough schedule ahead. They still have to play Kentucky this week, and then next week they have to travel to Tuscaloosa. So they have back-to-back road games in Lexington and Tuscaloosa. Still have to play the number 1 team in the land right now, the Georgia Bulldogs, and obviously – if you are familiar with the Mississippi schools, they have the annual Egg Bowl at the end of the season. So their schedule is very tough, but I think that, Mississippi State could be a team that can make some noise in the SEC West.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I'm glad the Bulldogs are back in the race finally after some down years. But yeah, definitely led by Will Rogers and definitely should be in one of those chairs as of right now for the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, could change.
Yeah. So for me, my riser of the week is the Syracuse Orange. Man, they've climbed up. They're now sitting at number 18 right now in the top 25 rankings. Not too many difficult games to start the season, but they are undefeated nonetheless. They did get a win at home against Purdue, was their big win, and of course they blew out Wagner here last week, 59-0. So, but the story of their schedule is what's coming up, what's next on the schedule. And next is, you got a home game against the NC State Wolfpack, and then you got to go to Clemson the next week, come back home and play Notre Dame, and then go on the road and play Pitt. And then you got to come back home, Florida State on the road at Wake Forest, and then finishing out at Boston College. So the meat of their schedule is in the second half of the year. So definitely was key for them to get out to a 5-0 start. And it means a lot going into this NC State game, gives them a lot of confidence. And I feel like if they can get through that NC State game and they get a pretty decisive win in that game, Clemson better pay attention to what can happen in that one. I mean, I know it is at Clemson, but still, things can happen wild. I mean, we saw what NC State did last year to Clemson, and we were like, what in the world happened? And then again, this year was close between those two teams. So, I mean, Syracuse really has a chance to make their mark in the ACC, and I look forward to them in the next few weeks putting on a show, and hopefully they can hang on there and at least keep it close with some of these teams. So that's for me. As far as fallers go, Tyler, who is your faller after week 6?
I'm going to go 2 for 2 here in the SEC. I'm going to stick with Kentucky, and they went from number 13 to number 22, so falling 9 spots in the ranking. Definitely a bad loss at home against South Carolina. Now they've reeled off 2 straight losses after losing. Who did they lose to before? I am drawing a blank. Oh my gosh, I can't even think. I don't know. I have to look at their schedule.
For Kentucky?
Yeah, Kentucky. I know that they
Uh,
lost to
Ole
South
Miss.
Carolina. Okay. Oh
Ole Miss.
yeah, they lost to Ole Miss. That's right. That's right. They lost a heartbreaker there. Yeah, but obviously, of excuses. They don't have Will Levis in this game against South Carolina, but South Carolina absolutely manhandled Kentucky in this one. It really wasn't close. South Carolina's offense and Spencer Rattler was able to find open receivers, and Marshawn Lloyd, the running back for South Carolina, had a good game. But I think that there was a lot of hype with Kentucky. They got as high as number 8 in the country, and then they lost back-to-back games, and they're to be honest with you, I don't even think they should be ranked. I mean, if you lose to a team like South Carolina, not even close, even with your backup quarterback, I think if you're talented enough and you're a top 25 team at home, you should be able to handle your business. So I think we're just going to see Kentucky. They're going to be at least a 4-loss team. I don't really see them beating Tennessee and Georgia. So I think that they finished the season probably like a 7-5, 8-4. Definitely a disappointing season it would be after like I mentioned, you start the season at number 8.
Yeah, and for me, my faller that fell out of the top 25 after last week is Washington and the Washington Huskies. Got off to a strong start. You get a win against Michigan State at home, and at the time they were ranked 11. So I mean, it was a big win. Then you get a win at home against Stanford in a blowout. But then you go to UCLA, and here comes, this is the time UCLA is at a high, and they lose by 8 on the road to UCLA, and then they go on the road to uh, Arizona State this past week, and they get beat by a touchdown against Arizona State. And the difference in that one was, of course, the pick six from Jordan Clark that was run back. So, I mean, defense came up big for Arizona State. Of course, not a great year for them. Of course, losing their head coach, or firing their head coach and everything. It's been a rough year, but a big win for that organization against a ranked team at the time. But Washington was at 21 last week. Of course, they've fallen out, and they ultimately look like they could be a 4-loss team at the end of this year. And looking from the outside looking in, because they've got some tough games still to come. Arizona next week, and still got to play Oregon on the road later this year, and you got a home game against Oregon State, who looks like they're still holding strong in the Pac-12, even though with a loss. So some tough games, on the rest of the way, and it looks like Washington State might be the team to run the state of Washington uh, for a little while, because both of these teams are at 2 losses. But Washington State just looks like the better team to me, and of course they always face off at the end of the year, Washington State. So that'll be a good game.
Apple Cup, baby.
That'll be a very good game to finish the season, and we'll look forward to that. But moving on from that, we'll get into our new week. And our new week, of course, is brought to you by our second sponsor of the show, and that is Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. If you guys want to go check what they have out, Chet, of course, is holding it down over there in Houston for the Sports Scramble show. And go see what those guys have to offer over there at the Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. Head over to www.buffbrew.com. We'll be sporting our shirts soon enough, as soon as we get them in, and we will show you guys what those look like, and of course all their cool merch and all their cool alcoholic beverages that they have over there in the Houston metro area. So go check them out at www.buffbrew.com. Tyler, week 7, here we go into our lovely ACC matchups, our 2 of the week, and both of them involving some ranked teams. NC State going on the road to face off against the Syracuse Orange. Great matchup here, I think, 15-18. I won't spend too long on it. We've talked a little bit of time about both of these teams. I'll give the nod to Syracuse for playing at home in the Dome. No longer the Carrier Dome, just the Dome. So I'm going to roll with the Syracuse Orange. I have more belief in their offense than NC State right now. And I think it'll be an offensive battle in this one.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about last week, and then this like we were looking at NC State and Florida State, like, oh, with this 2 talented quarterback, this should be a high scoring game, and then like a 19-17 game. I think this is going to be a different story. 2 talented quarterbacks once again, Devin Leary and then Garrett Schrader, the former Mississippi State quarterback. I think that Syracuse is a team, Dino Babers, I think that a lot of people discredit him, what he does. He has built a really great program there at Syracuse. I mean, Syracuse is dubbed as, being a basketball school, with like Carmelo Anthony and then, the great coaches that they have. But like you said, the Dome, Carrier Dome anymore. I wish they wouldn't have changed that. I like that name. But I think that this is going to be a close battle, but I'm going to give it to the Orange. I think they get it done at home. I'm going to go 35-28, give it to Syracuse.
Yeah, I like that score. Yeah, I'm around the same spot there. I'll go 32-28. But I do think Syracuse wins this game and holds on, and ultimately moves inside the top 15 with a win right there. Of course, our other game, the Clemson Tigers at number 4 headed down to Tallahassee to play against the Florida State Seminoles. This is an interesting game to watch. I think Florida State coming home after a tough loss against NC State. I think they're going to be looking for blood, and they know this team is at the top of the totem pole in the ACC, and I'm really sure they want to knock them off. And I'm pretty sure Mike Norvell wants to knock them off as well. And his introduction into the ACC really would be at the top of the list, knocking off Dabo Swinney and this Clemson Tiger team. So I feel like it'll be a close game. I think it'll probably be a field goal game at the end. I'm going to give it to Clemson. More of a defensive battle in this one. I don't think there's going to be a ton of points scored in this one. I'll go 24-21, and I'll give it to Clemson on the road.
Yeah, this feels like a defensive battle for me, but I think the really main story in this one, Clemson's offense is starting to heat up. DJ Uiagalelei is starting to play really good. Last season he didn't have a good season at all. I think that this year is his bounce back year. He's starting to play good. And Will Shipley, the running back for Clemson, is just getting touchdowns, seems like every game. I mean, the man's just consistent. I think that Jordan Travis is going to have a better game than he did on the road in Raleigh against NC State. Can't have any turnovers against the Clemson offense that's just be able to really beat you and put points up on the board. I think that Florida State's defensive line will be able to stop Will Shipley. Just a matter of can their secondary hold against a really good Clemson receiving core. I think that Florida State will play this one close. It is at home. Tomahawk Chop is going to be chopping, like I said, on the Sports Scramble. I did have this on my upset pick, but I didn't really feel confident anyways. So I'm not going to go 100% upset pick here, but I'm going to go Clemson in this one. I think they get the job done. I'll go 28-17. I think it's going to be close for probably 3 quarters, and then Clemson, just shows that they're too talented of a football team to lose on the road. So give me Dabo in this one.
Yeah, and then moving on from the ACC, we'll get to the Big 12 here, and some big matchups in the Big 12. Of course, a top 15 between number 8 Oklahoma State going on the road to face off against number 13 TCU and the Horned Frogs. Man, great football game, I think, here. This will tell the story, I think, of the Big 12 right here. Of course, there's no divisions in the Big 12. It's just, mass chaos in the rankings. But I think this game here, after last week, Sanders gets beat up, pretty bad in a tough game that they had to pull out, and looks like he's getting some wear and tear on his body from running constantly. I mean, he's gotten out of the pocket a lot lately and ran. He was cramping up pretty bad at the end of last game. And of course, on the other side, in Duggins at quarterback, unbelievable season so far for him. And TCU's offense just looks unstoppable right now. Playing at home, I'm going to give it to TCU in this one. I can't discredit the team that's come from nowhere to be undefeated at this point. So I'm going to give it to TCU at home. I'll probably go 38-35 in this one. It'll be a close one, but I believe in TCU fully in this one at home.
Yeah, I expect this one to be close as well. Both of the teams don't have a lick of a defense, especially Oklahoma State. I mean, we just saw Texas Tech put up 30 points on them. I think that the winner will get 40 in this one. It just feels like this is going to be like one of the more high-scoring shootout games that we've seen this weekend. So, like I mentioned, I think pretty much a lock if you look at both of these schedules to be in Arlington for the Big 12 championship. It's at home. I'm going to go Fort Worth. I've been picking against TCU for too long this season. I'm going to give it to the Horned Frogs. I'll give them the 42-38. These are 2 talented quarterbacks, Max Duggan and Spencer Sanders. I think they're going to combine for like 10 touchdowns in this one, whether that's on the ground or through the air because they definitely have the capabilities of doing both. But I'm going to give it to TCU. I think they clinch up and get into the top 10 and switch up with Oklahoma State. So I could see TCU be the number 8 team come next week.
So you're off the Oklahoma State train for a little bit,
Yeah,
and onto another one
it's
in
a
the
tough
Big 10.
road trip. I
Yeah,
think
it is.
they're gonna pack that stadium for sure. But yeah, I've been high on Oklahoma State, but I think that this TCU team has definitely been impressing me.
Yeah, and for a team that you and I have been high on after a close loss against TCU last week at number 19, not falling very far, is the Kansas Jayhawks, and of course they're going into Norman, Oklahoma to face off against OU. Uh, I think this game. I know that Kansas is on the road. Oklahoma just doesn't seem like they either want to play or they're just having a hard time, and it doesn't look very good for them. The times of Baker Mayfield and Caleb Williams are over. And of course, Dylan Gabriel being out for an extended period of time has given OU a lot of trouble in that Brett Venables offense. I feel like Kansas is the way better team here. I'm going to give them the 2 touchdown favorite in this one. I know they're underdogs in this one. So, for all intents and purposes, it is an upset pick. Uh, but I'm going to go with the Jayhawks on the road. I think it's going to be a 35-21 finish in this one.
Yeah, the problem for Oklahoma is their defense can't stop a soul. I mean, it doesn't matter who Kansas runs out there; they're going to roll out being the backup quarterback. I just think that Kansas's offense has proven that they can score against the Big 12 defenses. Like in the past couple of years, Kansas couldn't score like 10 points if they tried. So I think this year this is just a different environment with Lance Leipold. I think that Oklahoma will be able to score in this one. They did get shut out against a very physical Texas defense. I think that Kansas's defense will be able to force some turnovers from Dylan Gabriel. And I just can't really pick Oklahoma with confidence anymore after losing 3 straight to Oklahoma, starting with Kansas State a couple of weeks ago, and that much just batten down the hatches for Oklahoma. So I think that Kansas, I don't know how Oklahoma half-point favorite. If you're a betting man, bet on the Jayhawks to get it done on the road. Bet them, even go further. I would put them at I would change it to 5. I think that Kansas at least wins this one by a touchdown. I'll give Kansas the win. I think that they make a statement in this game. I'll go 38-27. I think that the Jayhawks get it done.
Absolutely. So big lines there for you and I. And moving on from the Big 12 into the Big 10 in a big game here that we've got, and another one that's not so big.
Well, it's big for the Big 10 West. I mean,
it is.
The winner
It
of
is
that will be
absolutely
first
for the
place.
standings. For the standings, it is absolutely huge. But the first one is probably the biggest of them all. Outside
Big noon kickoff.
Yeah, outside of the Alabama and Tennessee game, but this game here is the big noon kickoff for Fox, and that is number 10, the Penn State Nittany Lions, going to Ann Arbor to face off against the number 5 Michigan Wolverines. Man, for everything here that we're seeing, whoever the winner of this game could definitely creep into the top 4 based on what happens this week. So, I mean, it really, this weekend, it really could be the team for the Big Ten in the playoff outside of Ohio State's chances as well, because it's too early to tell. And of course, they're on the bye week this week. But I think the story for this game is if Penn State can get the running game going, I don't think Michigan's going to be able to stop them. Their secondary has struggled all year long, struggled against Iowa on the road, struggled against Illinois. I mean, just having a tough time. Or sorry, Indiana last week. A really close game. It was tied, almost tied at halftime. I think it was tied 10-10 at halftime. And
before Michigan pulled away.
Yeah, and it just took a whole another half before that happened. So I think the key for this game for me is having Penn State get out to a strong start. If they get out to a strong start and they're up at half, they just need to keep their foot on the gas, I think, for Michigan, and don't let them get back into the game, because that's happened multiple times this year where Michigan has gotten themselves back into games and have ultimately held on to their high ranking because of it. I think the biggest thing is get Nick Singleton going in the backfield for Penn State. Sean Clifford has to eliminate the turnovers. On the other side for Michigan, J.J. McCarthy is new to this whole thing, and this is a big game, the biggest game that he's played in up to this point. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. You have Corman in the backfield there, or Corum in the backfield, and it really could be a battle of the running backs in this game. And it's all about how the defensive line and linebackers respond, how those front seven respond. I feel like Penn State, this is a big statement win for them in Ann Arbor. It's been a long time since they've won at Ann Arbor. Just a different Penn State team. And Michigan just hasn't had that big fight out of anybody yet. So I look for a big statement win here. I'm going to go 33-24. I'll give it to Penn State on the road.
Like I told you on the Sunday show, every year, I'm sure that you know this as well. Penn State always starts off the year well, except for 2020, but that's asterisk year in my book. A lot of teams struggled in that year, but every year, Penn State, starts off. Oh, they're 5-0, 6-0. They get a lot of hype. They're in the top 10, and then they fall flat on their face. We saw it last year, literally the same weekend, I think, pretty much in Iowa. Sean Clifford goes down in that game, and then Penn State ultimately loses this one. I think that this year is a different story. I think this is the start of Penn State's run to the playoff, and it will start on Saturday morning in Ann Arbor. And Michigan fans are doing all the work, so they're doing these out. I feel like every school, tries to copy Penn State and trying to pick a color. Like, okay, we'll do a base out this week against Penn State. So I just think it's going to work. Michigan, like you. And if Blake Corum can't get it going, it's going to be a long day for Michigan because I just don't really trust J.J. McCarthy yet. I mean, he's a true freshman quarterback for a reason. This is, like you mentioned, this is going to be his first, big game. I mean, this ain't no Maryland. This isn't no Indiana. This is Big Ten football right here with Penn State's defense. I think I'm going to call it now. I think that John Porter Jr. is going to get an interception this one. I think he's going to get the game-winning interception. Like you mentioned, I think it's going to come down to the running backs, but I think this is the first time I've said it. I trust Sean Clifford more than I do J.J. McCarthy in this matchup. Can't believe that. But I just think that his experience is really going to vault him. We saw it on the road against Auburn. I'm not going to say it's going to be the same thing. Penn State blows out the doors in this one. Yeah, it would be crazy. I think it would vault like Penn State to like number 3 automatically. But this is a big game. I think that this is going to be a very physical game like it always is. I think that it's going to be a defensive battle. But I think that Penn State makes a statement in this one. I'll go 28-13 in this one. I'm going to give it to the Nittany Lions. And that's right, we are.
Penn State.
I was waiting for that.
For my mom tuning in there,
Yep.
of course. Penn State alum.
Spiel, and then I was going to flip it to we are after I did that. So,
but we're riding the Nittany Lion train for week 7. And of course, another big game here to decide really the Big Ten West. I know it's only week 7, but we're deciding the Big Ten West pretty much right here. And that's the Minnesota Golden Gophers going on the road to face off against the now ranked 24. They have cracked the top 25. The Illinois Fighting Illini. Pretty amazing, Tyler. You're shaking your head because
I just can't believe it.
I can't believe it. I know.
I mean, usually we see them, top 10 in basketball, but 24 in football, we haven't seen that in long time.
Long time. I don't think since their stadium's been built, we've seen that. So it's been a long time for Illinois, and I'm glad to see them back in the top 25, giving the Big Ten a little bit more oomph, with these other teams now in the West. You got to pick up the slack for teams like Wisconsin and Purdue, Minnesota not making it in the top 25. So somebody's got to do it. And Illinois is that team. Of course, they're playing at home in this one. I have a lot of belief in what they've done going forward through the season. And Minnesota looks like they're on the downhill, losing a tough game against Purdue. It just doesn't seem like PJ Fleck and Tanner Morgan are on the same page right now with that offense. Of course, he's donned as the 7-year quarterback for Minnesota, and it just doesn't seem like that experience is helping them at all right now. And it seems like the young Bucks are really running the show right now throughout all of college football. And Brett Bielema is definitely the most experienced head coach, I think, outside of Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin and Ryan Day. So, I mean, I think he's right there in that category with them. And ultimately, he might get a better job, going forward. We might see him go somewhere to the SEC, in the future, and we just don't know. and it's all a matter of the young and small careers of some of these head coaches going forward. But I've got Illinois winning this game at home. I think they're the better team. Low scoring game once again. I'm going to go 17-14. I think that they win this game. Uh, I mean, 20 points, or I'm sorry, no, would it be 26 points scored in 2 weeks is very low, but I think they can do it and get two W's back to back.
Yeah, I expect Illinois' offense to step up against the one of the better offense that they'll face all season. Like you mentioned, with like the 7-year quarterback in Tanner Morgan, it feels like he's been there since 2010. But yeah, like that offense was really taken off. I think that this is going to be a defensive battle. Minnesota's defense has been able to really show their might throughout the first 6 weeks of the season. So I think this is going to be a really good game, a defensive battle. I'm going to give Illinois the 17-14 game. It's going to be a field goal game. It's not going to be a blowout. It's going to be very close. It's going to be a grinded out game. I think that Chase Brown's going to have 2 touchdowns in this one. So I'm going to give Illinois the home win. I think that they continue to roll it on and continue to be first place in the Big Ten West and, be one of the more surprising teams in college football. It's been a crazy and wacky year. I mean, we're seeing TCU almost in the top 10, Illinois ranked, Kansas ranked. Like, what year are we in? Like 1985? Like, what's going on? I love
don't
it
know
though.
what's going on, but it's great. It's fantastic. And moving on to out west to the Pac-12, where there's a lot going on this weekend. Number 7 USC finally meets their match, or close to their match. And number 20 Utah with a bad taste in their mouth after last week on the road at UCLA. Man, I tell you what, this game right here is so big for USC that if they lose this football game, they will fall so far down that they could wipe away their college football playoff chances. And I think ultimately, if this is the case here, it really is going to be tough for USC to bounce back. Uh, I'm going to go with Utah to win at home. It is very tough to win at Utah in a night game. That is very hard to do. And I think that USC just hasn't had that challenge yet. Tough start to the game against Washington State at home last week. Here it is. I mean, it is on a silver platter for you. Come and take it. And I think Utah will be that team to come and take it from them. And I think ultimately Utah will stay inside the top 25. I don't know how with their 2 losses, but they will somehow stay in the top 25 in that 15 to 18 range, I think, with a win over number 7 team. I just think with 2 losses, you're not going to move up too far. But I think they win this game. It's going to be a close one. I think it's a high-scoring game. USC's not that great defensively, actually not very good at all defensively. Even with some of the best recruits in the country, offense is kind of the name of the game there. And for Utah, their defense has struggled lately to stop people. And Cam Rising and that offense has had to put a lot of the load on their shoulders. So I think this is going to be a good game. I'm going to go 37-28 in this one. I think that Utah gets it done, and I'm going with the Utes. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling a night game at Utah is a tough and almost insurmountable environment.
Yeah, I think that the problem with USC is their offense has always all the games that they played have been off to a slow start, especially in the Pac-12 conference game that they played so far. They can't really afford to do that against a Utah defense that's been struggling. They got to start off fast, especially on the road at night against a very hostile environment. In the preseason, I've been saying that Utah was going to beat USC. I circled this one, but jumping off the bandwagon, I'm going to go USC. I found my knight in shining armor with the Trojans. I switched Utah to USC now, being the Pac-12 champ. So I'm going to ride with USC and Caleb Williams. I think that he gets the job done. He's been in these big games. I think that Utah's defense is going to continue to struggle. I think that Utah and Cam Rising will be able to score in this one. I think USC isn't the greatest defense that we have seen in college football this year, but I think that I could see both teams get into the 30s, so I'll give both of the teams in the 30s. I think it's going to be a touchdown game. I'll give USC the 37-30 win on the road, and I think that the stamps that they're proof that they are indeed back.
Yeah, I mean, the deal with this game is that Utah's the 3.5-point favorite, which is pretty
Vegas knows
incredible.
something about night games in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, and I think that is the story of this, and of
I
course,
mean,
being close
if they're
game.
doing a blackout, then I'm gonna
Yeah,
feel real queasy about my USC pick because they don't lose when they do a blackout.
yeah, that'd be a very difficult environment to play in. But moving on to a pair of other teams in the Pac-12 that are doing all right this year. I mean, better than we thought either of them would be doing. Both 4-2 right now. The Washington State Cougars are going on the road to face off against the Oregon State Beavers. Man, Oregon State, surprise year from them. I kind of expected the start of the season for Washington State, not for Oregon State though. So credit to them and that organization. I think they get a big win at home here. They're the 3.5 at home. I think they get it done. I'm going to give them the touchdown win over Washington State. These two teams absolutely hate each other to the core. So this will be a lot of hatred and a lot of shoving, pushing back and forth in this game. But I'll have Oregon State. I'm going to go 35-28 in this one. I think that they get it done at home.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Beavers as well. I mean, they've shown that they have a good, they hold a really good USC team to 17 points. So I think that they can do the same thing at home against Washington State. I think that Oregon State gets the statement win. I don't think that Washington State. I think they played USC good last week, and they do have really good offense. But I think that Oregon State's offense is going to be able to score at will against Washington State. I'm going to give Oregon State 35-17 win. I think they really get a statement. I think that playing at Oregon State is a really tough environment as well in regards of playing at Utah. So I think I'm going to go with the Beavers in this one against Washington State.
We're both taking the Beavs here in the
There you go.
Pac-12 and moving on to the big bad SEC, and we got some big games here. This is the biggest conference of the week, I think, in the Power Five, and that is number 3 Alabama going to Knoxville to face off against the number 6. Now they have climbed up 2 spots after their big win at LSU, to number 6, and that's the Tennessee Volunteers. Uh, Man, let me tell you what, story of this game will be the quarterback play on both sides. If Bryce Young is back, which it seems like he will be back for this one, and Hooker on the other side for Tennessee. Man, let me tell you what, it'll be a shootout. I think both defenses. I feel like Tennessee actually has the better defense here. Um, Alabama has struggled to stop some people. They had trouble with Texas, even with the backup quarterback in. Trouble with A&M last week with putting up 20 points. With Haynes King, who really didn't do too much all beginning of the season for Texas A&M. So I mean, I think Alabama's defense has been put on notice here to show up, because if they don't show up, Tennessee very well could win this game by 2 touchdowns. I have more belief in Tennessee at home. I think they're the better team in this one overall. As far as defense is really the big factor for me. I think pushing that seesaw towards Tennessee. And the Volunteers, I think, win this game. I'll probably make it a little lower scoring. I don't think Alabama scores more than 2 touchdowns in this game. I'm going to go 28-14 in this one. I think it's just a hard place to play in Neyland Stadium. I just don't know if Alabama is going to see another environment like that all year. Knowing that this game is completely going to be sold out. So I'll take the Volunteers at home. They're just too good of a team right now to be stopped.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that Tennessee, this is their best chance to beat Alabama. I don't know how many years straight since Alabama's. It's like 12 years, I think, that Alabama has won in this series. Tennessee, had a couple of years that they've been close. 2016, whenever Josh Dobbs and Alvin Kamara was there, and I believe it was like 2010. I believe it was that blocked field goal that Cody had. So Tennessee has had their chances in this series, but this is their best chance, and this is the best quarterback that I think that this Alabama defense will face with Hendon Hooker. He had a really good game in Death Valley last weekend. Tennessee just blew the doors off LSU, and they were just a better team for 60 minutes. So I think that this Tennessee offense is legit, and they run tempo. We heard, I think, on ESPN that they were saying they only took like 20 seconds from each play, and that is very quick. So, like you mentioned, you were talking about Tennessee's defense being the best that this Alabama defense would face. I don't think that's the case. The two games I look at is Tennessee's is the Florida game. They gave up 450 yards passing to Anthony Richardson. Well, this past weekend, Missouri held them to 66 yards. So that says
Wow.
something about Tennessee's defense. I mean, Tennessee had a really good game plan against LSU's offense, and then Tennessee played Pitt. They gave up really big plays as well. So Bryce Young will play in this game. I would be shocked if he isn't. But I think that a lot of people are picking Tennessee, and that's why I'm picking against everyone. I'm going to pick Alabama. I'm going to go with the boring old pick here. I know I'm usually, wanting to, see some parity in this one, but I think that a lot of people are going with Tennessee. So I think, I know that Alabama's the favorite, but I feel like they're the underdog in this one. I don't think that a lot of people have faith that Alabama can win this game just because of the fact, they almost lost to Texas, almost lost to A&M. I think that Bryce Young shows that this weekend why he won the Heisman last year. And with Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield, I think that he's going to have a big game. I think the Alabama defense, I think they're going to struggle as well. This is going to be a high-scoring game in the SEC that we're really not familiar with. But I'm going to give Alabama the 35-31 win, so give me the tie.
Yeah, still a close game there, and will be a fantastic game to watch in the SEC. And our other game to watch in the SEC, two teams outside of the top 15. I am thrilled right now, Cameron. I've had a long day, man. I'm exhausted.
Grant's had an exam. I mean, he's probably brain dead. So the fact that he's here is kudos to him.
Crammed and crammed and crammed, and I finally got it out of the way, and it's done. So I'm trying to relax a little bit, and my relaxing has turned into my eyes getting very, very small because I'm worn out. I'm exhausted. So thank you for noticing, Cameron. So back to this one. Speaking of Cameron.
Yeah, speaking of Cameron, here we go.
Georgia's
right into
Bulldogs are just
the time
going on the road to face off in Lexington, Kentucky. Ooh, that's a tongue twister.
It is.
Who is number 22?
5 times fast.
I know, exhausting. So they're number 22 right now. The Wildcats have kind of fallen down a little bit. And they're holding on there right now. It's a tough game that they had to endure at Ole Miss. And that's kind of the result of what's happened lately. This game here, Mississippi State just seems like a totally different football team now. Big win against A&M putting up a fight with Bama. This is really going to be the time, I think, Mississippi State gets their way up into the top 15. I think this is their moment to do that. The problem is there's so many teams inside the top 15 that haven't
they won't
lost.
lose either.
Yeah, and it's just it's hard. Somebody's got to lose. I mean, it's got to go one way or the other.
People will lose this week. There's like 7 ranked matchups, so it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen somehow, some way. But Mississippi State, I think, is the better team here. I don't know if Levis is going to be back for Kentucky this week. I don't think so. Yeah, and I think it's ultimately Will Rogers and the Mississippi State offense is going to run the show, I think, in Lexington. So I think this is their week and their moment to step up big because they got a lot of games coming up. They're going to be really tough. So I'm going to take the Bulldogs in this one. I'm going to go 27-17 in this one, and I'll take Mississippi State on the road.
Okay, so a little lower scoring than we're seeing for Mississippi State. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm the only one, but why does this feel like such an easy pick and it's a ranked matchup? I mean, Kentucky is just falling off the face of the planet. They started undefeated, and then they lose back-to-back games, Ole Miss and South Carolina. I think even with Will Levis, I think that Mississippi State's defense has shown, last weekend, KJ Jefferson didn't play. Arkansas rolled out the backup quarterback, and Arkansas wasn't able to do much. And then 2 weeks ago, they faced Max Johnson. They were able to really shut him down. So I think that Mississippi State's defense isn't really talked about as much. I think they're legit. Their defensive front is really good. And you got to credit Will Rogers as well. I mean, he pretty much will have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in pretty much every game. So I think that Mississippi State, this game, this series has been back and forth. It has been dominated by Mississippi State recently. And I'm going to continue that. I think they score 40 points once again. I mean, why not? Who's stopping them? I mean, not Kentucky defense for sure. They've been struggling. So I'll give Mississippi State the 42-20 win over Mississippi State. And they enter the top 15 next week.
That'll be
and
fantastic.
Before we leave SEC, we have one more question. It's from my mother this time. Wonder who will be the quarterback for this weekend's LSU game. I know we hinted at this at the sports scramble, but you think that Gary Nussmeier or Jane Daniels should run out there in Gainesville?
I think Nussmeier is the answer for LSU, at least to give him a shot. I just feel like it's a lost cause to leave Daniels out there for another
Yeah.
week. Because I mean, you keep rolling the dice and it keeps landing on snake eyes. It ain't gonna work out very good for you. And I think that's what's happening with LSU. I think it's time for a change. Because of course, you know the old adage, three doubles and you go to jail. But I think it's Nussmeier only because Daniels just I don't think is producing in the right way for LSU. Uh, Not really designed to be a run out of the pocket offense. So I think it has to be Nussmeier just for a week, just to test the waters at least.
Well, here you go. Self-explanatory. Not Daniels, that's for sure. All right.
Yes.
That's all you need. There's your answer, I guess.
And moving on from the Power Five, we're going to the Group of Five, and of course, you guys know how we do it. It's only one Group of Five game for us over here at the Coast to Coast Show, and of course, that one involves one of our service teams, and that is Air Force. They're headed to Las Vegas to face off against UNLV. Two teams here that are both 4-2 right now. They look good. Both teams look good right now. I think Air Force is the better team here, though. I feel like if they run the ball well, they'll be able to take control of this one. Of course, we talked about how well Air Force has run the ball at the beginning of the season. And of course, I think it's going to continue for them. I think they're the better offensive team. I think this game will get into the 30s for Air Force, 20s for UNLV. So I'm going to go 35-24, and Air Force gets it done on the road.
Yeah, Air Force is coming off a disappointing loss on the road to Utah State. They gave up 30 points. I think that Air Force's defense has been struggling. Their offense hasn't been the problem. UNLV, I think they will be able to score as well. I see this both teams getting to the 30s as well. I know that you had UN in the 20s, but I think that UNLV will be able to score at home, but they won't be able to hit the triple sevens. I have them losing in this one. I'm going to go with the Air Force. I mean, I got to go with the troops. I mean, I just I can't put it in me to pick against Air Force, even they haven't been looking too good. But I'll give Air Force a 34-31 win. They get back on track in the Mountain West.
Yeah, a good win for Air Force and a tough loss for UNLV that we're predicting coming up this weekend. And of course, getting into our last segment of the show, and of course, our news. We do have one news statement. Of course, Jalen Daniels is out for the season for Kansas, so that is a big loss for.
And that's not Jaden Daniels, if you're a new fan. So don't. I'm sure, Lauren would love that. Probably you should put in Garrett Nussmeier, but this is Kansas's quarterback. If you're wondering.
Yes, Kansas's quarterback Jalen Daniels is out for the season. Of course, that's a tough loss for that program. And of course, they do have an experienced backup quarterback, but riding this guy all the way undefeated up to that point is very tough to lose him right now at this point in the season. Hopefully, Kansas can still hold on and play well. We're predicting them to win this upcoming week on the road at OU. I mean, it is a tough loss, but I think it's also a big boost for this Kansas team because I think they're going to rally behind him.
Yeah,
really go get a win for him this weekend, and I think it's going to be big going forward for them, and it gives development on the quarterback in the quarterback room, and as well as throughout the team. So it is a big loss, but I think in the long run, it is okay for Kansas. They're still staying afloat.
Yeah, I think it's a big loss for sure. I mean, Daniels gave you, he was a really good passer, and then he also was able to beat you with his legs. I mean, Bean can't really do that. I think that Bean is more of, a persistent passer than Daniels. So it definitely sucks if you're a Kansas fan and being out for the season, but you do have, I think, a really legitimate backup quarterback. He had some experience last year whenever Kansas was down. And then he showed it, in TCU. That team was still fighting behind him. So I think that, his teammates will rise behind that Kansas, will be just fine. But definitely prayers up for Daniels, and hopefully he'll get better for next season. And Kansas, can continue to build, a tradition that they're trying to build over there in Lawrence.
Absolutely. And our other piece here, we don't have a second news thing because there's not too much going on.
Yeah, this is our new
this is our new
New
thing. So
news.
we're gonna pose a news story, a news headline from college football, and we're also gonna pose a question. So you guys in
Yes,
the
and y'all,
comment
y'all can
console,
answer it as well.
yeah,
So
y'all can answer the question as well. In this one, but the question is, Tyler, who is the best team outside of the top 25 to make some noise late this season? I mean, there's a lot of teams that are really there that could make. When we say make some noise, this is pretty vague because they don't have to win the conference title. They don't have to make the college football playoff. They just have to be a, a well-rounded team. And Tyler, who's your pick that's outside of the top 10? There's a lot of good teams uh,
yeah,
that could be, to make some, make some noise um, later on the season.
yeah, this is very tough for me. I see a lot of teams. I'm down to two teams. It's either TCU or Mississippi State for me. I think I'm going to ride with Mississippi State. I think that TCU is a hot team right now. I'm going to go with Mississippi State. I do think that they beat Kentucky. I think with Alabama coming this next week, I think that's actually a good thing for Mississippi State. Alabama will be coming off of that very emotional game on the road in Knoxville against Tennessee. I think picking Alabama, they're going to win that game. I think that they come back and lose at home against Mississippi State. I think not only I said on the show they're going to beat Georgia. I think they have a potential to beat Ole Miss. I'm not going to make that pick as well. I still want to have some friends from Starkville, but I think that is definitely on the cards. I think that they really match up well against Alabama. Like you mentioned, Alabama's defense doesn't really look that great, and they got shredded up. We saw Quinn Ewers like throwing it down the field, and guess what Mississippi State does? They throw it down the field like 50 times. So I think that Mississippi State's going to be a team not only to make noise in SEC West, but could be an outside chance to get a New Year's Six bowl.
That's crazy to me, but it is a great Mississippi State team. So
It
I look
is.
forward to seeing what they're doing, and of course, being right now at number 16, they've got a lot of room to work with to move up as well. And for me, I'm going to go the team right outside of the top 10, right at number 11, and that's UCLA. Uh, Undefeated up to this point, they're a fantastic football team right now. I think they're making noise in the Pac-12 right now. And I think going forward, I think getting off to the start has helped, and I think they'll continue to make some noise in late this season. So I think of course, the big game here between USC and Utah ultimately would vault UCLA to the first spot there in the Pac-12. So I think it can happen for them. And I know it's been a while since Chip Kelly has been there, for that. So I think it's time for them, and they have a great offensive room, and defense has come up big for them lately. So I'm gonna go with the Bruins. I think they are uh, one of, if not the hottest team in all of college football right now. And it's tough for me to say that with a Pac-12 team because normally I dislike the Pac-12 a
Yeah.
lot.
We're like, oh, Pac-12 after dark. We don't have to watch that. But this year, they got some really good games, especially USC Utah. That's going to be a game to watch this weekend.
Yeah, they're trying to get it in before they move to the Big Ten, I think,
Oh, yeah.
and trying to show them all up and get the last conference title before they bounce.
Right.
And I think, of course, I think the people in the Big Ten, their eyes are getting bigger and bigger, going, oh crap, here, these teams are actually pretty good, and it could get very interesting in the Big Ten in the next couple of years. But I think for us, the parlay this week is going to be quite interesting because we got
This
a lot of
might
teams.
be like the most challenging time that we've had because this, like I mentioned, 7 ranked matchups, and it's going to be wild. So I'm definitely excited for this weekend. It's
Yeah,
going to
we
be
might have
Statement Saturday for sure.
we might have an all ranked parlay this weekend. We don't know yet, but we will definitely look at that and get that out to you guys to let you know what we're picking this weekend in college football. And of course, as always, you guys can follow us over on Twitter and Facebook. On Facebook at
Oh,
CFB Coast to Coast, and of course over at Twitter at CFB_Coast, the number 2 Coast. Of course, next week we will recap week 7, and we will get into week 8 with only a few more remaining after that before we get into our conference championships because it's moving fast and it's
yeah.
coming on fast.
It
Because
always does, but definitely
last
enjoy
week
every single week of it.
Absolutely. Last week was the halfway point of the season, so here we are going downhill now. We've already hit the peak, so a lot to come and a lot of speed bumps that we're going to hit here coming up. So and a lot of exits we're taking off for some big games here. So this is going to be crazy. So we're here. We're looking forward to it, and thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. And we will see you guys next week on our regularly scheduled day on Monday at 3. Just a crazy week this week. I'm sorry, guys, but we will be back on Monday at 3. And of course, you guys can watch Sports Scramble, which is on our Sunday night show. And of course, Tyler and Wade will be doing their SEC talk
coming up right after this.
Yeah, right after this, they'll be getting into SEC talk. So if you guys want to go over there and check them out, show them some love over there with their all SEC show. And of course, I'll probably be tuning in there as well. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys next week.